Good morning, good evening. Namaste.
Evening, Paul.
Hi, Shunzing. How you doing?
Yes, I'm well. Hope you are
Okay.
well too.
Yeah, pretty good.
Let's all pay our respects to you. Let's bow 3 times together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow.
So, shall we start with some meditation as usual, Shunzing?
Yes, Long Paul.
Okay. So, everyone, I'll set the clock for half an hour and I'll give a bit of instruction, but let's really use the time of silence, come to the quietness of the mind. Silence is golden. Right. So set yourself up in a good posture. And establish a sense of presence where you are, how you feel. So just the body sitting here, knowing what that feels like. So as soon as you do that, you start to compose your attention into the present moment. In a sense of composure, presence, it's actually very simple. So I like to use sound a lot to come into that sense of presence and composure. So listen to sound and let the sounds come to you. So it's not like you're searching for a particular sound or judging a sound. It's just sound, ambient sound, whatever it is. And there's the knowing. Sound is like this. Feel the body sitting here. The whole body awareness. Let body sensations become conscious. So you're not focusing on anything particular, just a kind of very open awareness. Listen to sound again. Perceive sound as in awareness. Sound as in awareness. Then feel your body, bodily sensations in awareness. So you perceive awareness as conscious space within which sound comes and goes, bodily feelings come and go, thoughts and emotions come and go. And so you're like the witness to change. Feel the breathing of the body. Not a hard focus, just allowing breath to become known. And breathing is in awareness. So composed and collected for one in-breath. And composed and collected for one out-breath. So this isn't so much concentration as an open attitude of awareness from moment to moment. Awareness that accepts all things, rejects none. So open-hearted awareness for one in-breath, one out-breath. And just keep returning to that simple attitude as thoughts come and go. Composing the mind, collecting attention to the way things are. Okay, I'll be quiet and let's sit in silence.
Long Paul. We'll now, we'll now request for Dhamma talk. Brahmachaloka Dipati Sahampati Patanjaliha Divaraya Chaka Santi Dasatha Araja Kajatika Dese Tudama Anukam Bimam Paja.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Hello again, everyone. Hope you're well. We've all managed to get COVID here, which wasn't so smart, but at least we all got it, right? There's very kind of Sangha feeling about our COVID, but fortunately, none of us were hospitalized and most of us had minor symptoms. And I think it's been what, 10 days now, 11 days. So I think we're out of the communicable part of the disease. Unfortunately, we had a big Vesak plan for the 15th. As you know, the full moon of May is what we call Vesak, which is the month of Vesak, and we celebrate the life of the Buddha. So we had rented a hall, Civitan Hall, in the nearby town of Perth, Canada, not Perth, Australia, and got sick. So we canceled the whole thing. So there you go. But we're okay. I was in the workshop trying to chop my fingers off and managed not to do that. So everything is good. And then for the birders, most exciting, the Baltimore Oriole has returned. And if you've ever seen a Baltimore Oriole, it is more orange than an orange. It's the most exquisite color. So that's good news. And then the most exciting thing, of course, is that our building of our Dharma hall is progressing very nicely. And so the property we're on is on what we call the Canadian Shield. And 10,000 years ago or such, if I would have lived here, there'd be 2 kilometers of ice above me. So this was covered in glaciers, and the glaciers sheared all the topsoil and took it down to Pennsylvania or Ohio, somewhere down there, down to the Americans. So they've got all our topsoil. And so here we have a lot of bare rock. So excavation is actually pretty easy. Once we get to bedrock, we can build on that. We don't have any problems with foundations and deep, whatever you do in clay soil or places like Bangkok. So they've dug out the pit, and they filled it with gravel, and the builders surveyed the land today, the boundary of the building. So that's very exciting. And our builder is an interesting guy. You see, he built the vihara for our nuns community. About 20 minutes from here, there's a Bhikkhuni hermitage. Ayamedha Nandi is the abbess there. Lovely group of women. And he built theirs some years ago. So he's a local builder, and he really loves the Sangha life in our communities. So we feel quite confident. Also, of course, prices are crazy right now. It's the worst time to build, and supply chains and so on. And our estimates of what it should be, of course, went crazy. And we were really, really nervous. But William and Karina and Michael and Zito, William and Karina in Singapore, Michael and Zito in KL, and Vipun in Thailand, they've kind of rallied around to help us with fundraising. So they say, go for it. So we're going to go for it. And yeah, I'm sure it'll all work out. But it is a bit nerve-wracking at times. But this is not the first time I've been involved in this kind of endeavor. And it is, it's a gift to the community, really, to have a place, to have a Dharma hall that is dedicated to peace and silence. So in the midst of this war in the Ukraine and other wars, to be actually involved in creating a peaceful environment feels pretty good, feels quite appropriate. So like that. So we're doing well. We're doing okay. In our anagark from Mexico, Daniel has just returned from Mexico. He got a 3-year visa, so that's nice. So we have a small community now. We're 4 bhikkhus, Ajahn Pavra and myself, Amr Siri, Siri Mado, Anagarka Aiden, Anagarka Daniel, and 2 lay people. So we're a pretty small community, but we're hardworking, and yeah, we're all right. Huh? So that's us. We're doing all right. So now I have to say something about Buddhism. I read an article in The Guardian, I think it was The Guardian, about a pro tennis, a Ukrainian pro tennis player who's been on the pro circuits for about 15 years, if I remember correctly. So at the end of his career, and he's enlisted in the Ukrainian army. And so one of the questions people sometimes ask is killing ever morally justified? That question doesn't really work in Buddhism, because no matter what you do, your mind still experiences it. So this fellow, he has a family, I think, his family, his wife and 2 kids are outside of Ukraine. His parents and grandparents and brothers are in Kiev. So he leaves the family, gets his parents out, gets much of the family out, enlists in the army. Then he goes to Bucha, the place where the atrocities were near Kiev. And he sees the atrocities and he's horrified. And he says, if I see a Russian soldier, I'll know what I do. And so he will probably be involved in killing or will kill. You could say that Ukrainian nationalists would say that's justified, and who's to blame the man? But still, his mind, we all know his mind is going to be a total mess at the end of this war, or already. And so Buddhism doesn't really have some kind of ethical norm where you can or can't do this. Buddhism talks about the law of karma. So whatever I do, for good or for ill, of that I shall be the heir. So if you think about a conscript from the Russian army who's been conscripted, his mind will be a mess. If you think about a mercenary, his mind is a mess. Or you could even think of someone maybe who's pacifist and who volunteers for Red Cross duty or something like that in the war. Their mind is going to have PTSD. So socially, you would get praise or not praise, but inwardly, we still have to, we have a mind, we have emotions. We're very sensitive beings. So can't just say that there's no consequences. All of life, all our intentions, all our actions are consequential. And so it's good to reflect that Buddhism talks, the teachings of the Buddha, from the way I use them, talks in, now I've mentioned this, but in kind of 2 avenues of approach. One is the personal and social and relationship way, and the other is what you might call phenomenology. So the personal is when we talk about our relationship to each other, to the land, our personal responsibilities. And that's when we use the sense of I. I am Viradhammo. I'm a senior monk here. I have my responsibilities. I have my monastic rule that I live by. I inhabit a 75-year-old body, and so on and so forth. And we employ the sense of I. So in this, we have the 5 precepts. I undertake the training to refrain from killing living beings. I undertake the training from refraining from taking that which is not given. I undertake the training to refrain from sexual misconduct. I undertake the training to refrain from lying. I undertake the training to refrain from consuming intoxicants that make me careless and stupid. And those are training rules. They're not like absolute moral principles, but those training rules are rules to protect society and to protect me. Kind of very, very common sense things. And then there's generosity. We're encouraged to be generous. So in a Buddhist sense, the kind of basic style is do as much good as you can in the world and as little harm as possible in the world. Simple enough. And you can see how, if that's the basic ethics that I live by, the consequences for my heart and mind are going to be much better than if I don't have those suggestions and boundaries and so on. So there's one part of our social life which is restraint, not doing, refraining from, and there's one part of our life which is doing, generosity, the Brahmaviharas, compassion, and so on and so forth. And that's when we use the sense of I undertake the training. And then if we talk about the other part of Buddhism, that's when you can look at it as like the phenomena of mind, the phenomena of consciousness, that we are emotional beings and that we have memories. We're sensitive, we hear things and we smell things, we feel pain, we feel old age, feel youth, whatever it is. And this stream of events, you could call it stream of consciousness, is something we're always experiencing day in and day out. It's just interesting how the Buddha then approaches that, because it's not just my participation in the life of the monastery, there's also my internal processes that are going on all the time. It's both, isn't it? And so the way the teaching approaches that internal part is by not making it personal, but trying to see it objectively. So if you take like the Four Noble Truths, the first noble truth is there is suffering. And that's very important to remember Buddhism. It's not saying I am suffering, which could be true. I've got a toothache, or I've injured myself in the workshop or something like this. That's true. And at that level, I take care of myself. But what the teaching is trying to do is get us to reflect on the phenomena of suffering and take this kind of witnessing posture or objective attitude to the very nature of suffering. So suffering becomes an object that I observe rather than I'm just a subject who is always suffering. Now, why is that important? Well, both are important. If I like, let's say, a couple of the monks here suffer from Lyme's disease. So on the personal level, they take medications and all kinds of things to try to alleviate the very real pain and inertia, nausea, and all kinds of things that Lyme disease can cause. But also, they can observe the symptoms of Lyme disease as phenomena of pain, and in the mental aspects of that, of disappointment, of depression, or annoyance. And they can find a place in their own minds which can witness the pain and not add another layer of suffering by getting depressed or getting angry or just feeling very, very sad and futile about it. So that part, that witnessing part, is very, very important, because there is something in our conscious experience which is very stable. And although Buddhism always talks about uncertainty, we're always talking about that, it's uncertain. The reason I would think that that's pointed to is to also indicate that there's something which is stable. And what is it that's stable? If you don't find that which is stable, then you're a leaf in the wind, just being blown around by emotions and situations and all the rest of it, sickness and happiness and all the ups and downs of life. So we try to deal with the social, with the external, with the the social responsibility of our lives in a way which gives us the maximum amount of possibility of actually witnessing the experience of consciousness. Because if I am caught in war, my mother used to say, anything but war. Anything but war. So horrible, obviously. But if my mind is so caught up in PTSD or the trauma of war, it's pretty hard to witness that. It's pretty hard, isn't it? And one feels for those people on so many levels. So those of us who live in relatively peaceful situations, the opportunity there is to live a really, really good life, to really do as much benefit for society as we can, because that gives a good result for the heart, creates good societies, but not just to leave it at that, but to see that stability we get from living both a moral life and a generous life, of being socially responsible, ecologically responsible, so on, that creates a foundation from which we can understand the spiritual side of our being, and that which is stable. I've been using the word stable for the past week for some reason. And so what is it that's stable? Well, where do you find stability in changing bodily feelings? Where do you find stability in changing sounds, or all the mass of thoughts and emotions and memories that we have as human beings? Well, the secret is that kind of witnessing posture. Because you can not only can I feel an emotion of worry, say, or a kind of scenario of worry in my mind, I can also say to myself, worry feels like this. And that's what the First Noble Truth is about. There is suffering, rather than, oh gosh, what am I going to do? We have these problems, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I have to deal with that. But also, I can adopt this kind of witnessing sense of objective awareness. And that's the key to the spiritual part of our lives, I would say, because that's how you find stability. And it's curious, isn't it? By noticing the changing nature of experience, you find that which is stable. And that's the only thing that's stable, that knowing of change. So if you didn't have that, then I think life would be pretty desperate, because you'd be trying to, hold everything so it doesn't change. Good luck. Or you just obliterate the mind with some distraction. Good luck. That's not going to work. But there's something very stable in our experience of life, and that's the knowing of change. Curious, isn't it? And yet, what happens is our attention is usually, if we don't have that objective witnessing, understanding. I think it is an understanding. It's not like an experience, like eating some ice cream or drinking coffee or something like that. It's not a sense experience per se. It's maybe the container for sense experience. Difficult words for this, but like in the meditation, I said, listen to sound. Now, when you establish that listening, what happens is you're not preferring the sound. If you're preferring the sound, you're not really listening. You're analyzing and judging and getting attracted or whatever. But you just take sound, whatever it is, traffic, chainsaws, kids playing in the streets, doesn't really matter. It's just sound. And you let sound become conscious. You let sound into consciousness. And in that, although the sound is changing, there's the stability of presence. And then you play around with bodily feeling. Now, rather than like focusing on the breath and concentrating, what if you just allow bodily feelings to be conscious? So they come up into consciousness. You feel the pressure on your seat, maybe your knees a bit sore, you feel hot, you feel cold, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You're just witnessing how the body feels. And then you say to that, and that's in awareness too. So now you create a perception that rather than I am in the body, feeling this pain, which is the subjective, you come more to the witnessing, say, yeah, but bodily feelings are in awareness. But so is sound. and begin to get the sense that awareness isn't really a kind of location in the middle of your forehead, because the middle of your forehead is actually in awareness, or your eyes, or your ears, or whatever you want. Then you begin to see, now if I can just learn to abide as that witnessing awareness, where might that take me? Well, it won't take you anywhere but here, but it certainly won't take you out into the complexity of suffering. So in the First Noble Truth, we say there is suffering. That's actually a very profound statement. People miss that. Well, of course there's suffering. Yeah, I've got ingrown toenails, and I had too much pizza yesterday. I got indigestion, and I've got arthritis. No. That's self. That's subjective. Yeah, that's true. You need to deal with it. But also there is dukkha. There is discontent. There is pain of Lyme disease. And it's really, our monks are very inspiring in this way, because they have developed a really strong practice around really horrible physical states and the mental states which come with that. Why? Because they've opted to treat the illnesses as good as possible. So that's the social part. Take care of the body. This is the body that I need to take care of. That's very important. But then the body is not really reliable. It's not a very stable place. So having taken care of it, without dismissing that, then where is their stability? Well, awareness can know bodily pain. It can know heat and cold. And it's very, very subtle. It doesn't fix the hot or cold, but it does get you to a place where you can bear with hot and cold and actually begin to find peace within the changing nature of a painful body. And then we have the emotions. The deer are romping around in the grass over here, distracting me. Emotions. We love our emotions sometimes. Here's one. Try this. Like, can you really feel sadness but not be sad? Does that make any sense? Can you feel anger but not be angry? Can you feel fear but not be afraid? Do you see what that might be? Take something like anger. There's a difference between anger and hatred, correct? Hatred to me seems you're really lost. Hatred is just this lack of forgiveness, and it's really invested with a sense of I and other and so on. That's hatred for me. That's the way I use language. But anger itself arises according to causes and conditions, according to the way the stream of consciousness has been conditioned. No one wakes up in the morning saying, I'm going to be angry at 3 this afternoon. It just arises. It's triggered by something. So it's natural. Now, we have to be responsible for it. But what would non-attachment to the arising of anger be? You might think that non-attachment means you never get angry. Well, good luck. To get irritated or whatever. So rather than just, kind of say to yourself, I should never be angry, which is not Dharma. It's just self-perception, idealism that you put on yourself. When anger does arise, what would be the witnessing posture with anger? Well, it would know that anger feels this way. And then you could know the feeling of anger, but not be angry. And what if you did that? Well, if you didn't do that, you'd be in a mental asylum. We all do that to some extent. Because if we just followed every emotion which came up, of course, we'd be totally neurotic. So we all do that to some extent. We all have that. But have you ever really, like with anger, that's a really strong emotion, or doubt, have you ever really just felt anger? What's anger really feel like as witness? Or doubt, or fear, or sadness, or loneliness, or grief. These are natural phenomena that come and go. And they're not a threat. It's like Lyme's disease. It's horrible. But there is the chance to be at peace with Lyme's disease. It's a tough practice. I don't know if I could do it. But these young monks tell me it's possible, so sadhu to them. But if our refuge is obviously body or emotions or social realities, then it's always very shaky, very shaky. We do our best. But what if we then said, when the negative emotions arose, what if we said then, well, what does it really feel like, this emotion? Like maybe grief or some kind of discontent, boredom or sadness. What is it really like? And that means that now I am no longer resisting it or demanding that it be otherwise. I let it come into consciousness. I let it come into consciousness, which is the same as sound. That's why I always suggest use very neutral and very neutral situations like sound to get a feeling for what this sense of awareness and witnessing is like. What does that feel like, just to witness? When you're not trying to figure something out or analyze it or go somewhere else. Just presence, witnessing, feels like that. And play around with the senses, bodily sense, smell, really neutral things. If you do that and you build on that basis in your meditation, then your meditation isn't really dependent on any sense experience. So if your meditation goes a bit funny and you have some pain somewhere and you have to move, that's not a problem. Because witnessing can notice pain, can notice moving. And so you develop a kind of facility of witnessing and being aware, irrespective of the quality of the experience. And this is why, like silent meditation, situations where you're not too intruded by sense objects or responsibilities is very, very helpful, very important kind of training. But obviously, it can't just be, hopefully, we're not just into quietism. That my whole life is somehow avoiding complexity and responsibility so I can just be quiet, my little meditation zone. That, to me, wouldn't be a full life. It would be an avoidance of life. And to me, it seemed it would probably mean there's some hidden stuff there that might get triggered. You might regret it. So it's not about quietism to me, but it's about finding that place of witnessing, which is quiet, and then seeing in ordinary life, why is that not possible? In the interchange with people, what's this mind that, what happens in complex situations? Now, the complex situations will bring up complex emotions. That's the way it works. But the witnessing is not complex. It just forgets, we kind of forget. So, say, like I always talk about my own fears. So I began to see that the fear wasn't the problem. The fear was just social anxiety and so on that was a part of the stream of consciousness. For some reason, it had been conditioned into the mind. I didn't know why, but there it was. So it wasn't my fault, but it was my responsibility, because if I didn't pay attention to it, I would just become more fearful. So then that idea began from Longpo Sumedho's suggestion of, well, can you really feel fear, but not be afraid? So what does he mean by that? Well, when I witness an emotion, negative emotion like that, I can see where it wants to go into thought and into self-view. What am I going to do? And this is going to happen, or I'm never going to forgive her, or they're terrible people. That is when I become fearful or I become angry. But when I just step back and say, yeah, anger is this way. Wow, it's really tense in there. Or, whew, the mind really is throwing up stuff. Wow. That attitude is one that knows and fully feels the fear. I'm not trying to get rid of the anger now. I'm just fully in the experience, but there's the witnessing. And what happens if you do that, then the witnessing actually gets very, very strong. Because now the things which have tended to create a strong sense of self and strong self-narratives and all the rest of it, now they no longer are threatening. Because even that I can know. Even that I can be aware of. And so the confidence in witnessing, the confidence in awareness, and the peacefulness of that comes more and more apparent, and you have more and more confidence in that. I was speaking to a friend on a Zoom call to Bangkok, and something really strong came up for her, and she felt she had lost the plot. But then I said to her, well, you practiced right speech. She said, yep, I didn't open my mouth. Could have, but I didn't. And you didn't kill anyone, did you? She said, no, I kept the precepts. So I said that, well, how do you know you weren't practicing rightly? And I thought she was really. And what happened is something got triggered and some strong emotional volcano came out of her. But is that wrong? Like, is that wrong to feel some strong emotion? Is that somehow my practice is wrong? Well, if you say that, what happens if it happens? And that's why I think earlier on in this talk, I said there's a difference between anger and hatred. There's a difference between fear and cowardice. Yeah. But if something erupts in the mind, some doubt or whatever, it is natural. Anger is natural. Fear is natural. They just are. They're conditioned phenomena that come and go. And so in this second way of looking at stream of consciousness or looking at the phenomena of a mind, what we're doing is by looking at it objectively, by seeing this changing nature of our inner world within our social contexts, we begin to see that by knowing change, you find that which is stable. In the knowing of change, you find stable. So I can say to myself in the midst of self-doubt, maybe, there's some self, am I really worthy? Am I up to this? Or guilt? And I have the presence of mind to say guilt feels this way, or self-doubt feels this way. And I'm going to really feel it now. I'm not going to blame myself. I'm not going to blame my mother or whoever you want. I'll just fully feel this now. This is a chance to fully know, say, guilt or something like that. That seems to me a big step in the spiritual life, because it's not just about finding a better emotional feeling. It's now accepting all emotional feelings as valid. And that's when you kind of go into the fire. Now that's self-indulgence. Self-indulgence, go in there, then thinking about, oh, I'm terrible, I'm guilty. Let's really feel this. And that's thought. That's not full feeling. But full feeling is a kind of trust and awareness that this will not overwhelm me. That this is not who I am. This is not my real home. This is conditioned phenomena. These are past karmas or whatever coming into consciousness. So this really works well for me. And then as the mind begins to have the courage to witness these very powerful things, then as they are no longer a threat, the heart can abide in a sense of witnessing, and you find that witnessing is very open-hearted. It's not constricted. It's not controlling, because it accepts all things and rejects none. And we begin to see why we quite often talk about awareness and compassion, awareness and loving kindness actually being one package. They're not really separate. Because for me to accept my own fears, I had to be open to them. And that's an aspect of loving kindness, an acceptance of something quite unpleasant and emotionally threatening and negative, blah, blah, blah. And so loving kindness is not just like liking things. It's like allowing things more, allowing this thing to come up into consciousness. And then what's the fear? What's the fear? So our real home, as Ajahn Chah would say, is not the emotions, it's not the body. We have responsibility. We have a real home. I have the monastery and so on. I have my responsibilities. That's a social part. But then my real home, that which is reliable and that I could always turn to in the midst of Lyme disease or COVID or whatever it is, there's always that possibility of refuge. So we use everything. We use everything to gain more confidence in that, I would say. And this isn't the sense, like the experience of COVID was a scratchy throat and in industrial quantities of cough syrup to try to alleviate it. So I did all of that. But always there's, oh yeah, COVID feels this way. And this will change. Now, you could say, well, what if you died? Well, that's changing. That's a real change, isn't it? And then what happens? Well, I don't know. I don't know what happens when the body dies, but it seems to me the best shot I have at understanding what awareness is in the context of a body is to be aware of change, the rational of itself. So again, try that like as homework this coming month or whatever. Like when something negative arises in your mind, can you really feel that and yet not be that? Does that make any sense? What's the difference between really feeling annoyed at someone in the Loblaws grocery line when they get in before you, or they're not social distancing or whatever? What does it really feel like, rather than becoming angry? Huh? Do this all the time and make that very, I would say, make that very deliberate, that kind of experiment, and let things come up into consciousness. They're not a threat. They're not a threat, because if you can be open to all these different things, then you find that confidence in witnessing, you begin to sense there's a deep silence there, and you begin to prefer silence to noise, the noise of thought. You incline towards silence, stillness, openness, space. Space is a very good perception to kind of bring into the ideas of awareness. Concentration is not so much about space, it's about object. But space, and that's what I was trying to do. Listen to sound, feel the body, listen to sound, feel the body, that these are in awareness, you start to get a sense of space. And space, conscious space, then is a real sense of letting go. These are subtle things that you can experiment with, but the whole object of it is not, the object of Buddhism is not to gain some perfect experience, because that doesn't exist, but to find that which knows the changing nature of experience and which is truly peaceful, which is the spiritual part. A moral life, a generous life is a necessary part of that, obviously. All right, I'll leave that for your reflection. Shanzian.
Let's all say 3 sadhus together. Andamayam ovadakatha sadhu karang kadamase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami. Longpo, hope that everyone at the monastery is now well from COVID.
How are you doing? Monastery has a stuffy head. What I say, and I think we're all well. And Ajahn Pavro's a scratchy throat. But yeah, we're like kind of 90% there. Thank you. Yeah.
We wish everyone speedy recovery and good health.
Thank you. Do you want to do a Q&A, or should we cash in our chips?
Yes, we will now move on with our Q&A session. We'd like to invite anyone who has any questions for Longpo to please click on the raise hand button, and we'll invite you to unmute. There are no questions yet. Longpo, maybe I have a question.
Please, Shanzian.
What is the kind of karma that leads to beings being physically involved in wars or even start wars, and how should one avoid creating such karma? Thank you, Longpo.
Yeah, I don't know. But I do know that the more I live in a moral universe and I associate with moral beings, the less chance there is of violence. But on a larger scale, I have no idea really. That's too big for my mind. But I think the question is, what would I do if I was in the Ukraine? Well, as a monk, I think we have a couple of Ukrainian monks there now from our tradition. I think they're in Poland helping with refugees. So that's what I would try to incline towards, I suppose. But I those larger questions of creating good karma and what are the consequences, my mind doesn't go there very much in seeing, because to me, I really don't know. But I do know that the more I can live, first of all, a moral life, an impeccable life, a life of generosity, then the people around me are of a similar vein, that I'm protected a lot from things, but that's no guarantee. And then also that I develop a refuge in awareness, then that's my best chance at handling it. But if they started to bomb Tisarana, I don't know what I'd do. I'd probably melt. So there's no guarantee that way. So I'm very kind of, although I don't think much about past lives or future lives, it seems to me to be too, I don't see the point of it really. But I know there's enough work in this life, and I trust that however things work on a larger scale, that doing the best I can in this life will take care of it. And this is complex enough for me. But why was my mother in the Second World War and that? I wonder if it's really possible to just that one person did one thing and they had this one result. I suspect it's much, much more complex than that. And I don't know, I can't see, well, if you do A, B, and C, then you'll never be in a war, that kind of thing. But my real love of Buddhism is not so much about good rebirth, but it's the end of rebirth. So that's another reason why I don't kind of go there. And then what is rebirth? And then I look at it in terms of ego as that. And then what is unconditioned, what is not born, what does not die. And that language really appeals to me. So I've never been a very kind of rebirth buff kind of guy that sort of in fact, I find it a little bit boring actually. So, but I do know that like some people will say, well, you were a monk in a past life. Maybe, sure, yeah. But so what? Maybe I was a poker player in a past life. It would make much sense. But to me, it's the kind of a speculation which creates just another layer of ego. I am someone, and then I was in a past life, and I am someone, and I'll be in a future life. And that whole way of thinking is what we call attavada, or sakayaditthi, or personality, that I am someone born in time, and then born again in time, and then born again in time. And that may be true at some level, but the whole point of Buddhism is that you don't buy into attavada, sakayaditthi, personality, that I am someone who will become something, because that's what we call avijja. So Shunzing in Paticca Samuppada, we have avijja pacaya sankara, sankara pacaya vijnana, and so on. Avijja means self-view, personality view, and that's in the whole dependent origination arises, but it can be chopped out when there's no longer this whole sense of avijja. So to even think, what can I do so that I'm not reborn in the future, is avijja. But if you right now look at avijja as the whole sense of self, and look at that as an object, that whole way of thinking is just an object that arises and ceases, then you're inclining to the deathless, to the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed. And I think that's very important in these kind of dialogues that Buddhists have about, this kind of birth and that kind of birth. That's all very well and good, but is that really what the Buddha was teaching? He might have indicated that those are possibilities in terms of the transformations of consciousness. But was that the import of his teaching? Was he pointing to, or was he pointing to the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed, the deathless? I think he was. That was the point of his teaching. So if we get too much caught up into past lives and future lives, I think we miss the Buddha's teaching. So when that language comes up, we say, yeah, but who says that? Who thinks that? What is that? And that becomes an object, and you begin to abide or incline towards the unconditioned. That which is not born does not die. And that language doesn't get presented much in Buddhism. What gets presented a lot is change and the instability of life, and the instability of sense processes and that. And also making good karma, making merit. But then that whole teaching, there is the unconditioned, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed, the deathless. If there were not that, there would be no release from birth and death. That I think sometimes Theravada doesn't emphasize that enough. And yet it seems, the Buddha's enlightenment was that realization. His realization wasn't how to get to heaven or how not to be reborn in a war zone. That wasn't his realization. He just, his realization was transcendent. So I would like, when Buddhist communities get into those kind of speculations, you can do it, but is it profitable? Or does not that create another sense of self, another layer of ego, another sense of self? That was a riff, wasn't it? I didn't think I'd go there. David, Glenda, how are you? Unmute yourself, sir.
You didn't.
There you go.
There you go.
Hello, Glenda again.
How you doing?
Thanks.
I should just comment on living with COVID certainly has brought us into a place of total uncertainty and unpredictability, hasn't it?
Right, yeah.
It's a major
Cancel the birthday party.
And so far we've avoided it, and we're being very careful. But it's hard to get rid of the fear of, what's going to happen if we do get it, and can we keep doing this to avoid it, and and how long can that last? And I've
got my antibodies. I'm good. What question, Glenn? Did you have a question?
Yes, I do, and it's around. I've been struggling with insomnia for the past several years, and so I've been working with it by bringing mindfulness in when I'm laying there and I can't fall asleep. So go to the body, listen, sound, keep when my mind starts getting panicked, like, oh my gosh, I won't fall asleep. Like, just keep coming back to presence. And then recently I've been trying, okay, this is anxiety. What does anxiety feel like? This is, there's death terror here, right? Because there's a thought, if I can't fall asleep, I'll keep getting more ill, and then I'll die young. So it's death fear. So it's like, I find it's still, I can't fall asleep. It's sort of like because I'm still caught up somewhat. So I'm wondering, it's like the ego, the me, is so preoccupied with the death of not being able to fall asleep, the death of brain cells, of getting dementia, right? That I'm still lacking something, obviously, as I lay there trying to be mindful.
So how many years has this been?
It's been really heightened since menopause hit, because I guess estrogen helps with falling asleep, apparently. Probably the last 7-8 years.
Are you dead?
Not yet, but my brain is getting more and more.
All right, there's a good one. Have you seen any brain cells on the floor that?
No. But I'm getting more dense and memory problems.
So am I. But one thing I would question is the idea that you cannot be aware in deep sleep. So it is possible for the body to rest and still be aware. So the underlying idea, which seems to be holding your fear, is an idea that sleep is a certain way. In other words, you become unconscious. And if you don't have that, then you're not sleeping properly. So then the aversion you have to not falling asleep creates the fear and such like. So why don't you use what could we say a more kind of experimental approach? Okay, I'll just let it be the way it is and see, how am I the next day? Was it really that bad? Did I spill the milk all over the floor? Or is that something that I'm creating about the next day? And so just take the evidence of a night and just accept that, okay, I can't fall asleep. But is the result really that bad? Evidence-based. But if you try yoga nidra, did I suggest that last time, Glenda? Yoga nidra. The thing about yoga nidra, lying meditation, its strength, I think, is in not moving. When you toss and turn and you want to fall asleep, you move a lot. Correct?
Yes, that's true.
Right. So you're trying to basically annihilate consciousness by bouncing back and forth, left, right, and so on.
Yeah, definitely.
And that aversion to not falling asleep makes you, of course, more restless. So the idea of yoga nidra is that you don't move. That you lay down in Sarvasana posture, and I think I explained that you get your knees up a bit under a pillow, you small your back comfortable, you get your head comfortable, Sarvasana, corpse posture, and then you make not moving the meditation. And you'll find that you really want to move because you want to fall asleep. Now, if you can introduce that into the insomnia, even for half an hour, sometimes you'll find that you fall asleep, but also sometimes you find that actually you're very restful. You're very rested, but you've been mindful through it, being aware through deep sleep. So let's say for myself, I'm 75, so sleep patterns have changed. And because I can do yoga nidra, it's quite interesting in that way. And I can see if I want to fall asleep, it's the desire to turn on the side, I can do that too. So I would say, first of all, look at that movement of the body all the time, back and forth. I can't fall asleep, and just try like yoga nidra for a while, just stillness of body. And because this huge aversion, a lot of people have that. They have this fear of not sleeping, and so on and so forth. And because of ideas that seem pretty natural. And then you'll read an article, you need 8 hours sleep, and then that'll really set you off, right? So don't read any articles about sleep when you see the headline. But actually, I know it's like, especially if you do get like an hour sleep and you wake up at 3 or something like that, and then you look at the clock and it's a total disaster, then that's a really good time to yoga nidra. Go to the washroom, have some water or something laid down, and just kind of give it a go. And it's the stillness of the posture which I find very helpful. Do you get the kind of what do you call shaky leg syndrome? You get that one?
I don't get that, but it's like I put my head on the pillow and it feels so incredibly uncomfortable that I have to constantly move my head, readjust it.
Okay. That's what you have to.
My ear gets really sore.
Well, whatever posture you take, at some point, you're going to have to notice the discomfort as an object.
Right.
Rather than be the subject of the discomfort.
Right.
You know the difference, right?
Yeah, observe it.
Exactly, yeah. And just name it. Discomfort feels this way. And of course, your mind doesn't want discomfort. It wants something else, so it keeps moving. That's why, like yoga nidra on your back is it doesn't crush your ears or anything like that. It doesn't crush your shoulder. It's all kind of balanced. And then discomfort that comes up is actually, you can say, well, that's just discomfort. See if you can just be with the discomfort rather than need to move all the time. So there's two reasons we move: to get more comfortable, but also to annihilate consciousness by being on our side. That's what we're used to doing. So now by establishing sarvasana, the death part, the corpse posture, and making a determination not to move. It's not rigid. It's not like, I'm not going to move. It's not that. It's just, no, I'm going to explore the desire to move. So the desire to move is related to some extent of wanting to fall asleep and not wanting discomfort. Now you're looking at desire. Not, just by observing the desire to move, look at desire, and the mind begins to calm down. And so if you can see it as an experiment in this rather than a technique to fall asleep. If you think it's a technique to fall asleep, then you're just buying into that whole desire pattern. Okay, I'll say what monks said. I'll do it. Okay, I'm doing it. I'm not falling asleep. This isn't working. So you're quite pure in your observation and curious. So that kind of makes sense?
Yes, that's very, very helpful. I have not explored that.
I'll get the sense that if you could do that, even if you don't fall asleep, you'll be more rested.
You are. You can. It's amazing. The body can have deep, deep relaxation. And, the great yogis in the Advaita tradition, they talk about awareness persisting through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. This is a common thing you find, I think, Lopalian, our own teachers have said that, and those of us who do yoga nidra, we swear that sometimes, the awareness went right through deep sleep, and yet you feel rested. So all those models we have about sleep are they're scientifically true and they're valid, but maybe awareness can actually, consciousness is possible, and it's always there. It's just our identity with the body and ego, I think, that doesn't allow that experiment. It's worthy of investigation rather than just, I've got this problem, and that just kind of hypes the mind even more, doesn't it?
Yes, thank you. It feels really good.
We'll look for her brain cells in the morning. See if there's any truth to it.
Speak them up and put them in a little pot.
Thank you.
I love your humor.
Okay. Laura?
Thank you, Luang Por. We have another question.
Laura's there. There we go. Laura, if you can unmute yourself. There you go. Hi, Laura.
Hi. I am new to you and this group. I am not too far away in Ottawa. I hope that when COVID permits, I would very much like to go to the monastery and see that beautiful place you speak of, deer and orioles included. Before I pose my question, just because I am talking to you, I'd like to explain a little bit about why am I here and what am I seeking. I received what has been called a life-limiting diagnosis about 8 months ago. And this situation has brought me to places where I want to explore what I need. I need to explore serenity and peace and acceptance. So this is why I am here. In today's talk, my question is specifically about this, the question you pose about how do I feel anger, but do not become angry. And I am wondering if if a place to start is first to remember yourself when the anger arises and then not engage. And so
Right.
I'd like to hear what your thoughts, your views are on that. But also, does it apply equally to what we name or brand negative feelings? Like, how do I feel anger without becoming angry? What about joy? How do I feel joy without being joyful? It's that sounds so counterintuitive to me that I'd like to hear your thoughts on both those questions. Thank you.
Great question.
Thank
Laura, just before I answer,
Yes.
do you think consciousness is a physical phenomenon?
I don't know. I am very puzzled. I will tell you a little bit about what happened to me when I was given this diagnosis. Some in me, I don't want to say I because I did not decide. It never took it personally. I very instinctively accepted it as the universe. And for the first time in my life, I understood there is a universe. I don't want to call it God. There is a universe. Maybe that's consciousness. I don't know. This universe is unfolding exactly as it should. I may not like it. I may not understand it, but this is happening because I have a job to do. And what I need to do is figure out what that job is. So, is there consciousness? Is consciousness something physical? I have no idea. I don't know.
Well, whatever insight you had is obviously very calming and very wise. Some intuition in you has this wisdom to say, okay, this is the lesson. This is where we go. Okay, so back to your question about fully feeling anger, not being angry, fully feeling joy, not being joyous. When you feel the loving emotions, like let's say if you feel compassion for someone suffering, and that seems like a really good emotion, but if you run with that compassion and you take it on, you can get very, very worried and upset about someone suffering. Whereas when you take compassion and you just know compassion and you connect to the person and you have no agenda of having to fix it, you can fix it, you can do what you can, but you really know compassion just as it feels, then you're directly in contact with the person. Same with joy. If you experience springtime and a great joy arises in your mind, if you fully feel that joy, then it's a full experience that arises, stays with you. If you run with that joy and get excited and so on, you actually lose the joy because you're caught in a mind, you're caught in thought, you're caught in abstracts, you're caught in restlessness and so on. So to fully feel joy or to fully feel anger is the same thing because our emotional world has these kind of dualities. But what's interesting is when the ego part falls away, when the greed, hatred, and delusion falls away, then our connection with life is no longer blocked or hindered by our own preferences, by our own perversions, our own biases. It's open to the way things are. And in that openness, there's an appropriate response. This response might be silence. The response might be joy. The response might be compassionate action. It doesn't really matter. But the response now is because the heart is free to respond. Whereas when it's caught up with its own preferences and desires and biases and angers and all of that, with its own history, it's not available to that. It's not available to beauty. It sees beauty every now and then, but then it retreats back into its own thoughts and ideas and all of that. So I would suggest in what you're going through, fully be with sickness, fully be with whatever it is there, and see that which knows isn't sick. That which is aware is something, is really your spiritual home. And it can be with all things. And fully being with it, then there's no fear. And that to me is really what open-heartedness is about. Loving kindness is about this acceptance of the complexity of human birth and human emotions. But in itself is a refuge. It's a refuge of knowing clearly. But I'm really, the insight or your wisdom or intuition when this came to you is really wise. You said, yeah, I'm not the body. This is just the universe saying, okay, here's the lesson for you. Let's go for it. And that's really commendable. It's really encouraging. So please do come.
You're commending, not me. The universe.
That's it. The universe. There you go.
The universe said, yes. I don't feel it as it came to me. It simply came to me. Yeah.
It's not egotistical.
It's also interesting because it's not, the overriding emotion is not fear. It's never been. It's profound sadness. And so I find very interesting when you speak about how can I feel sadness and not feel sad? It's very hard, very hard.
But you understand the principle.
And I try to do exactly what I am asking. I try not to engage. I try to say, oh yeah, okay, this is sadness, but I try not to weep.
Yeah, to have like a direct perception of something like sadness without all the thought processes on top of it is very, very difficult. But you're going right, you're really looking at sadness before concepts, before the sense of self, before all those structures come into play. And do that with nature. Like look at a blossoming cherry tree. The cherries are in blossom now, or apple, right? And just look at a cherry tree and just let it come to you without the comment, isn't that beautiful? Or that's a cherry tree, without any thought. Go directly to the perception and then do the same thing to sadness. Because that's what you're doing. No comment, it's like this. And you go right towards it. What's it really like? And then trust in that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bonne chance.
Thank you.
Come and visit. Okay. Shenzhen, have we covered the field?
Yes, in the interest of time, maybe we'll end the session here.
Okay.
Maybe invite Lumpur to lead us in the Metta Sutta chant.
That would be nice. Let's do that. Shenzhen, I have some, the Sangha's here, so we'll do the audio, okay?
Yes, your sound is okay.
This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Okay, everyone. See you next
Thank you, Long
time.
Paul.
Ciao.
May we all pay our respects to Long Paul with 3 bows. First bow, second bow, third bow.
Nice to be with you.